Welcome, everybody. We're so happy to see you here. Gemma was the first person here, and we thought we were going to have a really lovely conversation with Gemma for the next 70 minutes, which we thought would be fun anyway. I'm Catherine Klein from Catholic University, and I'm here with Susan Brooks from Drexel and Cindy Edbeck from Elon. And so we are here talking about Many Roads to Rome, a dialogue in promoting social justice using many frameworks. So when we were talking about amongst ourselves, we keep talking about modest things we can do to promote our passion for social justice. So what we plan here, we hope will be a lively interactive session where we explore how we might incorporate our passion for social justice with our students in a variety of different contexts, because I know we teach in different ways. So thinking about our seminars, our field supervision, our individual supervision if we're in a live clinic, in our classes. So we hope that the frameworks we're going to present and then hear from you will inspire us to do more of this work. So in the, I've noticed that everybody introduces themselves in these sessions, which I think is a good idea. So we're going to do it again. And maybe if you could just tell us what your name is, what your school is, and if there's any reason, something that sparked your interest in coming here. If you can just quickly tell us what that is, that would be great. Can we start here?
My name is Allison Lintel. I'm at Penn State Dickinson Law, and I oversee a general class, so I was interested in promoting this in more than just public service placements.
My name is Elizabeth Goodwin, and I'm at Wake Forest University School of Law. And it's the same thing. I have a general class, and so I'd like to know how we can work on social justice with some of these in-house.
I'm Anne Gordon. I'm from Duke. Same. I also teach a class called Social Justice Lawyering, and I would love to sort of carve out a space within the law school of being a social justice sort of person.
Warrior.
One of them. Yeah, exactly. So I'd love to be able to do that in my externships as well.
Let's go back this way and then we'll come.
I'm Susie Harrington-Stephan from Roger Williams in Rhode Island, and I teach a section of the public interest externship program. And we were just recently having discussions that we feel like we've moved. We're based in sort of the public interest hub of the law school, and we've gotten so obsessed with experiential ed that sometimes I feel like we're losing our social justice roots. That we're just like experiential skills, and they're like, wait, we're public interest people. So I want to see what we're going to talk about.
Okay, great.
I'm Laura Burstein. I'm at SMU Dedman School of Law in Dallas, and I am our public interest director, and I'm newly teaching the government public interest externship program, and I need more frameworks in which to speak about social justice with sort of a conservative school composition.
Hi, I'm Rob Russ from Ave Maria in Naples, Florida, and I'm handling the internship and externship programs, teaching and overseeing.
Jennifer Lucas Ross, also from Ave Maria. I have been overseeing the pro bono program for several years, and I just got the externship program overseas, so I'm trying to consider.
Thank you. How about that?
I'm Mary Daniel. I'm from John Marshall in Chicago. I do 35 social justice.
Business all the time.
Yeah, I need a class to go to. No. Because I'm very concerned about this, especially now that I want to see the impact of paid externships and the effect on this as well.
Sean Leister, Washburn Law in Topeka, Kansas, and I'm actually talking at the next session about social justice and rural externships. So,
Yay.
different perspectives.
Good. Love all the synergy.
Oh, sorry, I I'm Lori McLaughlin. I'm from the University of Alabama. I'm our assistant dean for public interest in pro bono, so I'm already working with a lot of students who are interested in social justice, but I just took on externships where that's not always true, so I just want to learn how to deal with other groups.
Hi, I'm Sarah Jackson. I'm from UC Davis, and my background is in social justice lawyering, but one thing I kind of enjoy about externships is that we only have public sector, so it's not explicitly social justice, but it's the opportunities to weave that in for students that may be going on to more private sector work, but are in a public serving placement now, and so trying to invite that tradition into their longer term work.
Hi, I'm Lexi Freeman from Denver Law. Social justice is like everything I care about and more, so just want to always looking forward to different spaces. And I also follow where this goes. So.
My name is Connie Smotherman. I'm at Oklahoma. My faculty is not as engaged in experiential learning as maybe they should be, but they have latched onto our pro bono program and have dived in, totally committed to that. So I'm hoping to learn some ways that maybe I can piggyback.
Hi, I'm Gemma Smith from the University of Windsor, Faculty of Law in Canada and Anishinaabe Territory. And I'm thrilled to be here because I want to know more from all of you because I'm starting an externship program which is unusual in the Canadian context. I'm starting it in the fall. And I had structured it around a social justice orientation to begin with. And then I'm now naively getting all this sort of negative feedback that I hadn't anticipated, so I'm here to learn from you.
I'm Marjorie Silver, I'm the Extension Director at Toro, and I teach the General Civil Extension Seminar, and almost all of my placements are with the private sector. So I would love to know how to infuse more social justice.
My name is Laura Fry. I'm at University of Southern California, which has private placements, in-house counseling. I came from University of California, Irvine, which was both very social justice, public service oriented, and no private placements, and experiential learning. And now I'm at USC where it's sort of, okay. So, anything I can get to help shape.
My name is Amy Sankrin, and I'm at the University of Michigan Law School, and I'm actually in Sarah's boat where I only have public and government or nonprofit placements, and so but I get some students who would rather be in private placements, and I really like to do more to reach those students while they're doing the more public service work.
Hi, Sue Schechter. I work at UC Berkeley, and our program as well is limited to nonprofit government agencies. And but one day I woke up and realized half my students are going to private firms, and not that they're the bad guys, but at all, but because they are really hungry and want to know how they're going to keep doing kind of that kind of work or promote those kind of causes. So always looking for good ideas from you guys.
Hi, Denise Roy from Mitchell Hamlin. I'm our externship director, and I'm interested in social justice teaching across the curriculum, but also specifically, teaching it in a general course and to students who are in private placements or headed for, private for-profit work after law school.
I'm Daisy Floyd at Mercer University School of Law, and I teach externships. Our externships are general, and so same thing, just how we talk about this. And with a pretty conservative student body, so wanting to reach students both where they are and then help them maybe move a little bit from where they are.
I'm Tim Floyd. I'm also at Mercer, and I read the description. Of course, social justice first and foremost, but relational competencies and leadership and emotional intelligence. I got to go to that. And then I saw who was presenting. I go to anything that these three are doing.
That's us. What a great audience. Not audience, but good participants.
And to move forward, so.
There we go.
Oh, you're going
Now it's working.
backwards.
It's not working.
You're going backwards.
Oh, I was going backwards?
Yeah.
Well, that was the problem. Okay. I'm holding this upside down. Okay. All right. So here's our little roadmap for today, and we're going to try to make the presentation part of this really brief. So we're not going to be able to go into a lot of depth about the curricular aspects of what we do, but we're happy to talk more, and we're really going to be inviting some of your ideas so we can share together. So we're going to start with defining what we mean by this ethic of social justice, and that's where your cards are going to come in. Cindy's going to tell you about that in a moment. And then we're going to illustrate, kind of using our three contexts, just highlight an example of how we're using a different framework to kind of get at this aspect of an ethic of social justice as a learning goal. And then, as I said, we're going to all kind of do some work together to draw from our collective experience. And I wanted to say very, very quickly that when we're talking about these other frameworks, we call this our modest proposal, right? So we're not saying that this gets us all the way there. We want to say, I think our claim is that these are necessary in a lot of ways and not sufficient. So there may be other components that are needed, And we need to think about these other sort of core frameworks that we can bring to establish kind of a foundation for our students. Okay, I can see.
So can you turn it?
All right, so if I turn it, I'm kind of confused. Oh, that's it.
Look at the way it's
Yeah, that's
written.
it.
I got it, okay.
All right, so a quick break. We want you to take 2 minutes to brainstorm and write about how do you define social justice ethic? Because many of you talk about social justice, public interest, whatever. So how do you define that? Click it one more time. What words, phrases do you use when you think about social justice ethic? And then we're going to share.
So this is not for the cards.
That is for the cards. Right. Right.
And we want to thank Amy for the cards.
I have more.
Connect your.
Get multicolored one next time.
Oh. Need more cards? Yeah. Raise your hand if you need another card. All right, so how did you define it? How do you define social justice ethic? I don't know why I can't put those two words together. Everybody knows social justice ethic. Anyone? Shout out. What'd you write down?
Caring about marginalized.
Caring about the marginalized. Okay? Yep.
Recognition of and resistance to the paradigms of oppression that dominate our world.
You can abbreviate that.
All right, yeah.
Awareness and something.
Yeah, recognition and resistance.
Resistance, yes. Recognition and resistance of domination, of oppression. Okay. Yes, sir.
Just simple access to justice.
Access to justice, yes.
Ain't so simple, is it?
Okay, access to justice.
Access to
I
justice.
got that,
So A
okay.
and J. What else? Social justice ethic. If we're going to try to teach our students and have them show a social justice ethic, what does that look like?
Talk about the shifting power dynamics.
Shifting power dynamics. Elaborate a little bit. What do you mean?
Well, related to some of the, probably the second bullet point, but to sort of elevate and put at the forefront issues, voices, concerns of marginalized, those who have been historically oppressed. So that seemed like a lot. That's why I just
I heard elevate voices, elevate,
marginalized.
elevate,
Concerns.
yeah.
Yes.
Examining our social contract, what there is of it at this point, and with my opinion that it needs rebuilding, but based on fundamentally having all of us a fundamental responsibility to each other singly and as a whole.
And you would summarize that as?
I have no idea.
Can I say we're all in this together?
Yes.
Yes.
Examining our social contract.
Interdependency,
Yes.
Okay,
And what you saying?
interdependency, recognition of interdependency.
okay, I'll write that too, okay.
We're all in this together.
And Mary, did you?
I was gonna say, like sort of a flow chart, listening that leads to counseling, that leads to a feeling that you actually count for the client.
Oh, I love this, wait a second, we have to get this, all right. Do you want to come up here and draw it?
No.
Okay.
We don't have time.
All right, go
Later.
ahead. Say it one more time, though. Listening that leads to,
To counseling.
right?
Because, I mean, a lot of times, just listening makes a huge bit of difference, but sometimes there of course isn't a remedy for every wrong.
Right. Right.
being able to talk about that.
Listening to
Which leads-
counseling
But
to-
just to that feeling a feeling of being counted.
Okay,
The client is feeling.
right,
Client.
okay.
Yes.
Understanding poverty and the roots of poverty.
Understanding poverty and the roots of poverty. Daisy.
Well, I was just gonna say, in addition to getting our students to understand how lawyers can make a difference in these systems, to also get them to understand how they can make a difference in the lives of each client. So focus at the individual level.
Not
as
tall
well as
enough.
the system.
Okay.
And one last one, so, again.
Yeah, have a duty to explain the legal system, doesn't understand it.
The duty to explain the legal system. And specifically about the legal system.
Just want to start, yeah, folks out as lawyers, volunteering in the community, advising.
So the role of the lawyer in the community.
Broader role.
Yeah. So the role of the lawyer in the broader community.
Community educator.
Okay, well, as you can see, we have a lot of different thoughts, and I'm sure that you wrote down some even more, about what this means when we start thinking about, well, what are we teaching our students about social justice? What does it mean? What does social justice mean? We're now going to talk about, I'm going to turn it over to.
So we thought just to have like one other, like a perspective on this, we would use a good authority. So here's Brian Stevenson's advice about how we can do more to kind of increase social justice in the world. And I thought this is interesting to think about how this translates into teaching goals. So he talks about this idea of getting proximate, getting close up. And this may be the piece that our frameworks don't totally get us to, right? Because I think there is something to the clinical experience, the pro bono experience that allows, or the externship experience that allows students to really get up close with these kinds of experiences, but we can talk about that more. Staying hopeful, getting uncomfortable, which has come up more than once in this conference, that we need to get uncomfortable, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And then he specifically talks about changing the narrative, and what he means there is around racism and the history of racism in this country, that we have to come to some awareness and acceptance of that and willingness to try to address that. So we're sort of using this as the backdrop, and now we're going to each take a turn and kind of tell you a little bit about sort of our own work. So for me, I have been doing this sort of on this journey that currently where I'm at with it is I've been teaching a framework that I call relational lawyering. And I've come to represent it, and it's interesting because there was someone that described a graphic very similar to this in the session I was in yesterday, but really around these three, I didn't make this term up, but these fields of transformation. So the personal, the interpersonal, and systemic. And it was interesting, I was talking with our externship teachers because I've just been experimenting with this in a course this year for 1Ls. And we're talking about the possibility of taking this framework into our sort of general externship seminar, maybe next year, but sort of piloted it with some 1Ls. So I actually structured the course in these three parts, starting with the personal, then going to the interpersonal and the systemic. And so when we get to the systemic part of it, we're talking more directly about social justice. But so I just want to kind of share, this is what I've sort of come to through some work and there's some writing I've done on this, but these basic relational principles. I'm just going to talk through these really quickly because we don't, time is the essence. So kindness and curiosity toward self and others. Mattering, which I think goes to that point that was made, a feeling of being counted. Sort of actually teaching to students this idea that everybody wants to matter, everybody wants to be seen and heard. And what does that mean for them, about themselves, and what does that mean for clients? What does that mean for the clerk at the court, the witness, you name it, the security guard, the parking attendant, right? All those people. And so it's not, this relational framework is in the service of clients, and it's about all of the relationships in that professional world that we're in. So appreciating the importance of context, which includes, prominently culture. Taking a strengths orientation toward themselves, toward students, toward clients, toward others. And this idea of an ethic of care, which goes back to the work of Carol Gilligan and others. So these are some core relational practices, and I have a little bit longer list, but the one I want to focus on today is fostering empathy and compassion. So I think that's really such a centerpiece, and a big part of that being self-compassion. So how many people have seen this video? How many people have not seen the video? Let me ask that way.
I have not seen it.
Okay, because I don't want to show it if it's something everybody has seen. So Brene Brown, who I'm like a huge fan of, in fact, somebody accused me of, you're just teaching Brene Brown to law students. I'm like, yeah, exactly. So this is a little video that she narrated, although it was basically just a TED Talk that she gave, a piece of a TED Talk that someone created this little short animated video. It's 3 minutes. So I'm actually going to show it, and what I've done is to show the video actually twice. I usually show it twice because it's so short and students miss things. And then we've had a discussion about it. I've had students think about where have you maybe applied, or either in your experience, how other people have heard your stories, or how you might have heard other people's stories. So with that, oh wait, go back. Click video. Yeah, we have to click. Okay, here we go. Do I have to do something?
Yeah, push the line.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, I'm down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, huh? No. You want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. I had it, yeah. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. At least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
Hi, that's the video. Let's see if I can do this without screwing up the PowerPoint. Okay. All right, so I just wanted to highlight the 4 components of empathy that she talks about, and I love that she calls it this sacred space. And so I'll just let you kind of read them. But, I'm going to turn it over to Catherine, who's going to kind of explore some of these ideas kind of in another framework.
Can you assume these will be posted with
Sure, well, yes.
I don't know if there's.
Yes, well, we'll submit them to the website.
No.
What?
Some people keep saying they're, oh, they have.
Oh, well, no, the video you can find on, it's on, yeah, the video I think is open source, it's on the internet.
Just the PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Stop taking notes.
No. Okay, so my little framework, not a little framework, but my framework for thinking about teaching to raise social justice issues, an ethic of social justice, has to do with autonomy, and it builds on relationships. It's sort of what I found I needed in relationships and what I hope to impart to my students. And why focus on autonomy? I'm going to just make a case that people, that if they feel like they have autonomy, they're happier, they're more productive, they're more persistent, they're more creative, they're more successful in even externally judged ways, and I think they're more receptive to having a social justice focus in broad ways because they respect other people in a different way after having experienced this. So a little bit about how I got here, which has to do with some people in this very community, because I was here today with Larry Krieger and Amy presented, and this, the thinking about, it's like words mean something. So I have this term autonomy now that means a whole bunch of different things, but I can get back to what I care about by thinking about it, and it helps me focus on it. But I'm not gonna, I came to this because I went to a conference, I don't know if anybody else was there, called Humanizing Law School, Legal Education. Were you all there at Washburn 10 years ago? And I went to a presentation that Larry did with his research partner, Ken Shelton, and I was kind of blown away. I learned that, now maybe you all know this, but that law students are very depressed people. And I learned that they've done some very, very serious research, and that law students, as by and large, come into law school maybe happier, more self-confident than the general population, and that by the end of first year, they're depressed, they feel not confident, not successful, and that this feeling of depression doesn't leave after first year. It remains with them throughout law school and carries on into their career. So I'm thinking, oh wow, it's just like, here I am in law school, what am I doing about this? And some people were unhappy in law school, I wasn't one of those people. So, it was kind of eye-opening to me. So, they talk about self-determination theory is really what autonomy is about. But it comes down to, we did some, I've done a lot of thinking and research on this since then, and autonomy, mastery, and purpose were the terms that Daniel Pink wrote about in the book Drive that sort of popularized a lot of this research. And so they said that people need autonomy, which is the feeling that you can direct your own life. Mastery, these are just simple, there's other ways to think of these terms. Urge to get better and better at something that really matters. And purpose or relatedness means you want to do this work in the service of others. So I keep thinking about these terms in my teaching. So if you are, and think about, so I also had another light bulb moment when doing this icebreaker at the Summer Institute at Georgetown, that we always ask people, well, what gives you joy in your work? And I would do it, and I would always find that I, first of all, loved the autonomy I had in my job, and I loved having a relationship that I got to have with students and clients. And my colleagues do. I'll put my colleagues in there too. But, and I kept thinking, all right, I'm going to do something so that my students feel the same way about this. So, giving people choice. So I always try to think, well, how can I give students choice? And there's lots of different ways. I have some slides that talk about different ways that you can actually do it. But so I always say, what choice can I make? So let them make and give them more room than you feel comfortable with. And I've been really delighted with the results. So, and then the second point is that when you can't give somebody a choice, so you have to, yes, you have to follow, you have to fill out the forms, you have to do these things. You have to tell them why you're doing it and why it's important and why it's important for the program, but also maybe for being a lawyer. And then perspective taking, showing people that you care about what they think. So you're always, when somebody has an idea, you're actually taking it seriously and responding to it like you care about what it means. So now there's a really good article by social scientist John Marshall Reeve. Some people might know this person, but talks about applying autonomy supportive things in teaching. And these are just some of the things that teachers can do. Time listening, so we can listen to these slides will be available. Asking students what they want. So you can think about what, in your placements, externships are a great place to exercise this. Let your students go where they want to go. What is meaningful to them? So these are all just, how much time does the student get to talk? Praise as informational feedback. Instead of being negative, to put it in the positive. And we all know teachers that are able to do that. And I always respond to them. I always think of Rick Rowe at Georgetown. He's like the most positive person. I always think, I gotta be more like that. Offering an encouragement, hints, being responsive to student-generated questions. So I just thought about how I actually do it. So, let them set the agenda for things. Giving them choice if they're in a clinic, what cases to work on, what projects to work on. Say, what are you interested in? Really helping them think about it. Working in teams. And I find that teams really helps. The more you can build up the relationships between the peers, the less they're dependent on you. And I always think of myself, even with my kids, I do this. I want them to be powerful against me. So if they get to talk to each other, then they can deal with me better. Rounds, allowing students to leave. Bob Jones was talking about how he's at 8 o'clock a.m. class, and he says the only reason it works is because the students take the leadership on what they do in that class. Otherwise, it would be, everybody would be grumbling about being there. So, modeling our behavior, respect, listening, deference to clients' choices. I think the more we model what we hope they will be with their clients and society, with our students, the more they get it. So that's just my little modest thing. So Cindy, this is Larry's slide. I just had to bring it up to show this is really research that says that all those good benefits come from autonomy. Should I?
Trying to be accountable to each other for our time, which is another principle, I think.
So, can you do social justice when you're alone on a tropical island? Can you? No, not really. Because social justice, and I think if you look at some of the phrases and ideas that you shared, have to do with relationships, right? And so we've already built upon kind of the foundation, I would say, laid the foundation for talking about relationships and emphasizing with our students, first and foremost, that they need to have good relationships, right? And we're going to help them have good relationships. So in a way, we're being subversive, right? We're not saying, oh, this will make you more caring about social issues or other people, but there is something in it for you. We're going to start with that foundation, emotional intelligence, autonomy, empathy, and at Elon, where I'm at, we teach leadership to all our students. So they have to do a course.
Are you using them?
Oh, there we go. They have to take a course. They actually have 2 courses, but it's being changed up a little bit right now, but a 2-credit course on leadership. And I was surprised when I came to learn that the model that they use is actually called relational leadership model. And this is a model that is used, evidently, I didn't know this, more and more at the college level.
So this person, Lucas Combines, and Ms. Mertner, Exploring Leadership for College Students Who Want to Make a Difference. So this is a book that they're reading at the college level at a lot of universities and colleges around the country. So this model of relational leadership really has to do, I think where this has come from, and I haven't read a lot about the background of it, but where it's coming from is that if you look forward to what your students are going to be doing in college, and for us, what our students are going to be doing in the practice of law, and to some degree in law school, is they're going to be working on teams, right? And so the idea with relational leadership is that it's a process, that a relational process of people coming together, attempting to accomplish change or make a difference to benefit the common good. And this is, the verbiage changes, from person to person, situation to situation, but the idea is that that common good is whatever that group is trying to produce, right? And so for us, it would be a benefit to the client, perhaps. So there are 5 primary components to relational leadership: purposeful, inclusive, empowering, ethical, and process-oriented. We actually have a PhD doctorate person over from Main campus come on. He's at our Center for Leadership on Main campus at the university. He comes over and talks about this stuff. And so he can bring with it kind of the impromptu of I'm an expert, because I'm not an expert. I can read and I can share and I can do exercises and things like that, but I think it's helpful to bring in other people who are expert in this area when you're at a university and you have these kind of resources. So he comes in and he talks about leadership, the science of leadership, the different models, and he focuses on this. Again, every student is getting this, and he's not talking about social justice, but this is a foundation on which we can build, right? When they get to the externship, which every student also has to do that at Elon. And most of them, well, about half are in private settings. Sorry, this has a lot of click-throughs. So purposeful, just to real quickly look at the different elements, and you can think about how this fits in with building that foundation for social justice ethic. Purposeful, having an individual commitment to a goal or an activity, is also the individual ability to collaborate and to find common ground with others to establish a common purpose, vision for a group, or work toward the public good. Inclusive of people and diverse points of view to have a successful team, right? We talked on that team setting, and they have actually team projects that they then have to go out and do. They were live projects in the community, and I think that component's going to come back, but right now they're using case studies, like a policy school would use. So they're public law case studies. So in order to have a successful team, you have to appreciate those diverse views, and so you can come to results. Empowering, this is a big process for relational lawyering, that you're empowering others on your team, and of course they're empowering you as well. So it's kind of we're all leaders kind of idea. Ethical, especially for us in the law, and we're driven by these values and standards of leadership, which is good or moral in nature. And then finally, process-oriented. And that's where you come back again to kind of the science of it, and these are what businesses do, right? They go on leadership retreats, and they have processes, and they learn how to be a group and how to be a successful group, and how to accomplish, of course, goals. Okay, so who's leading this one?
Okay, this is the fun part, that we're going to let you work together to come up with a list of things that that you think you are doing or would like to do in your externship, your clinic, your seminar, based on things you heard here, you know, autonomy, leadership, empathy, any of those resonate with you, or just your own ideas, like how, you know, what do you do that feels like it furthers the goal of social justice? And then we're going to give you a piece of each group. So if you just form like a group of whatever is comfortable, you know, 3 to 5 people that you're close to. We're going to give you a sheet of paper that you could just jot down your ideas. So, because we're looking for some tools, some ideas that all of us might be able to build on.
Yeah, 5 is good. Yeah.
So maybe if you're here too,
We're Tucson.
you're Tucson, well, and you're at the same school, so we need to. Oh, yeah. All right, so.
We know each other well.
Yes, so maybe join another group, split up and join another group.
I'm assuming they're getting
We don't even really, our leader.
Yeah, here's Oh, okay, let's decorate.
I do.
I also struggle with it. So my background is like, with our profession or with a lot of design. You should take a photo. It's like, they were like, they were going to law school where I was in
Is that your phone?
Or you find out.
Good, I mean, put it back, I was telling you.
So I get I get tripped up whenever you're office or I'm trying to be why I said things like this direction, like all the different roles.
Yes.
And like definitely play it out. It's where they copy it, like, where they copy it, like, and like a different. Similar to just,
You're trying to, oh, you're trying to. I thought it was just video, by the way.
Yeah, like a law partner, and like, yeah, so, you know, so like that's what I said. Put them in roles. No, but we do our, in our general.
I just said that I maybe like before the public to start getting, should we refer back to this? Frame ups, just moving out. But he shows really that is to see that they do.
But there is no. I mean, like, it's a relationship.
Well, and I think this is more, I'm watching so where students have All that's, it all starts with. And then I think, there's this idea that just focus on, I actually think social justice is.
I totally buy it. Now that I actually choose. But
No, but there was a new one. There was a new one. It was like a survey that had to do like small amounts of
Right.
and like this
Right.
she talks about the idea of like experiencing joy and strength, and rallies and like where you experience joy, like that all those things add to the relationship. So I mean, I think that's the kind of thing, look again, honestly, that's not bias.
I love like what have you done to get yourself farther along? Like, get down to so that's fun. I think that students,
like you cannot treat yourself.
That's where, you can say, and this is where I like my family talks about holding tension is life-giving ways. So my client and my client would say these words need to hear.
and they love once they get, they're like,
We have to be able to live in these paradigms. And embracing embracing complexity. Justice.
But also,
No, but then we can have more discussion.
but I'm just wondering.
Federal civil rights.
If you wish, if you'd like to write it down.
Yeah, that's why I talk about it.
We're all right.
We're all right. We're gonna focus on just getting yeah.
Like when I said that maybe there we have to decide which one from there. After it's, but that they can just choose one thing and then we can go around and.
Like in the color story, I think it's
Oh, yeah. Let's do that. Let's mute this.
so all one.
It's somewhere.
There's one oriented, like how to. Only one marker.
But they have some.
Yeah, they have.
There's more here.
So it's like how are you?
But I don't know. Yeah, after that, they have to tell them where they are.
I think so.
Okay, do people need a couple more minutes or can we? Okay, how about 2 more minutes? Okay, 2 more minutes? So we're actually pretty fine. Which is good, because then. Yeah, so that's good that now we have time for it. So how about you give one idea?
Yeah, I think so. And then we can do more.
And then what I'm thinking is also, yeah.
React to it.
Yes, yeah.
But be mindful.
Okay, everyone, I hear that maybe people are still discussing ideas, but maybe we can come together now, and what we'd like to do is to try to collect some of these ideas and share them, and then have some additional time for questions and conversation. So, what we'd like to do is go around and hear like maybe just one idea from each group, and then we'll maybe do a second round if we have time.
Maybe you can give 10 seconds for the group to decide which idea.
Okay, do you want to take a moment and decide which idea? Or you've got one, okay. Everybody have their idea that they want to share?
And then we're going to put the flip chart pages up here at the end. And so you can take pictures and pose with them or whatever.
Okay. All right, does anybody want to volunteer to start? The invitation, the autonomy, support, anybody would like to start?
Denise, it was your idea, do you want to? I can read it. Which is to encourage.
Oh, wait, I don't know if you want to hold it up so people can see, or have somebody else.
It's the one with the star.
Okay.
It's to encourage our students, let me give one background, which is we're trying to connect everything we put on the board with what the presentations were.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah, that's what we're going to talk about.
And we were hoping you would do that. No, but let me say, I was feeling a disconnect. Okay. And the conversation led on to Daisy's story about a student who knew he wanted to go into the private sector but chose legal services to see what that was like, and it was a transformative experience. In his externship, sorry. And Denise said we should encourage our students to select placements outside their comfort zone, which we thought.
Okay. Great. Yeah, I'm glad you shared that, Marjorie. We were talking about how maybe we needed to spend some time sort of connecting what was on the board to our presentation, but we thought, let's hear what you have to say, and then we can try to connect more of those dots. All right, that's all. Was it? This group I think was eager to go as well.
Well, I know you do this at Drexel as well, but our group talked a little bit about the Brian Stevenson concept of getting proximate and how through client intake interviews, we have our 1Ls do that, or through pro bono programs that we have our students actually get into the community and observe things that are outside of their comfort zone, things that they might not be used to. So just that exposure, having that exposure as part of the experience.
Is there any debrief from those experiences, or is it
Yeah, it's part of a
anything?
class. It's part of a first year class where they're doing live client interviews in a homeless shelter.
Okay. Wow. Great. Okay. Yes.
So, I don't know, but let's do this one. So, we talked about two that are pretty related. Introduce students to civil rights lawyers in the community who have done this work, or have the students interview their supervisors if there are placements that are particularly, so that they're getting connected and learning more about this social justice issue.
Great.
And I think we talked about ways in class, particularly in multi-sector classes, to get students to reflect either both simulations and their reflections, kind of regardless of where they are, on how they can engage issues of justice or issues of bias, or something talked about which I thought was an interesting idea, the poverty simulation that they do in a different class, but the types of simulations that kind of expand how students are thinking. Lexi said she had one that was related to not the students, but the people, like the experiences that they may face if you're trying to get a medical procedure, that, you know, where you have hurdles that you may or may not have to get over, that just, and not all students, some students may be very versed and others may not. But so that positions students just to think both about themselves as well as the type of things that their clients may be facing. So kind of an ethic of conscientiousness that they may bring back to their placements regardless of sector.
Okay. I like the ethic of conscientiousness. All right, let's maybe, we have like a few more minutes, so maybe, does anybody want to share a second idea?
Well, I think it's kind of like what Sarah talked about. We do this role play where, I mean, we take over most of a class with it, where we pretend you're a legal services organization and you find out you're going to lose your legal services corporation funding, and, you know, it's obviously relevant, timely. And then we have people who are like all different players, like a rep from the LSC organization, someone who's the executive director, the managing attorney, the client. Because, you know, students think that the director, the client, the manager all have the same interests. And then they start having to parse out who's, and then we have somebody who's on the board of your organization, works on a law firm, and they do it as a pro bono person. So they all take different roles, and we give them like, we send that out like a week or so before the class, so they can really think through, like, please come prepared to, like, you know, make your case for, you know, so what are you gonna do about this? Who are you gonna lay off? What are you gonna da-da-da-da-da? And like, they get so frustrated. They're like, I don't wanna lay anybody off. And then obviously we use it as a way to show them, like, unmet, you know, you're already not meeting the need in your community. Now what are you gonna do?
Now you got to all food stamps.
Right.
So which course is that?
This is just a general food placement workshop for people who are, at nonprofits or government agencies.
Oh, but they are all public, they're going into public interest placements.
Yeah, we don't do private placements, but I can't, I mean, you know, it seems like.
I just wondered how people in the private sector who are going to private sector placements, if they were in that class, how they would take a legal services example, how would they take that, you think? Does anyone do it in a more general externship class, something that's very focused on access to justice?
Well, I mean, there's, point taken, but there are students who are at the SEC, I mean, at city attorney's office, so they're not, you know, they're not all like reading part people, but I mean, they're all very, you know.
But it is perfect, I'm just kidding.
But I mean, point taken, but I think it's really great for them to have to do this role thing here.
Absolutely, no, it's great.
Like, what do you
We
think
did that yesterday.
Yeah, we did.
Yes, we did.
And that was good. I just want to throw something out about poverty. In my seminar, I begin and end on poverty, even though it's not what the substance of the class is about, but it's do access to justice. Look at the Lassiter case. We actually look at the case. We look at the transcript of what the testimony was, and students are shocked, just completely shocked that this woman didn't have a lawyer, and how abusive the judge was to her. So, you know, and then we do, you know, look at access to justice reports, and we really focus on DC where I'm located, but you could do it in your own community and like, what is going on in your community. And then we go back to it, and the students are kind of surprised, but they'll go along with you on all these journeys, you know, that it's all relevant to the role of the lawyer, no matter what they're going to do to address these issues of access to justice.
Do we want to maybe just get one or two more? Anybody have another idea that they thought, I'm just dying to share this? Yes.
Well, this isn't my idea, but I wanted to add on because it relates to Sue. So I went to the University of Miami, and the Health Rights Clinic there is doing something really interesting in this role-playing scenario. So Augusta Boals Theater of the Oppressed, they're doing sort of a take on that to do intervention-informed theater. So they're doing like a client intake, but allowing them, the students, to sort of intervene and direct the conversation. So I think that's a really interesting way to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I do some things around just like having students think about story, and this sort of I've done in that sort of context as well, but just even in a more like interviewing and listening exercise context, to have students share a story of success, like a story where they themselves had to overcome something challenging, either in a relationship or a situation they were in, and to think about what factors might have like contributed to that, but then also to think about a story of frustration. And in each case, they have to like share that story with somebody else. And then to think specifically about a client, whether that's in a, you know, more of a poverty law context or any context, but a client having to make themselves vulnerable, you know, of course, that may not always come up in a business transaction, but I think almost in any, you know, I'm convinced that in any practice of law, the real focus of what lawyers need to do is about the relationship and about building relationships. And you know, I'll just say quickly, I mean, for me, where the dots connect in those three circles is the idea that the more I'm in touch with myself and how I'm bringing myself into any interaction, the more I then can be intentional about how I'm interacting with that other person. And I think bringing out these principles of kindness and curiosity, just how small acts of kindness toward other people can make a big difference, you know? And again, I'm not saying that it's gonna like cure the world. And, you know, truthfully, if everybody were to like, just to, you know, carry forth random acts of kindness toward each other and, you know, kind of really be in more of a space of empathy, you know, I think it would get us pretty far along the road towards social justice. Yeah.
So to connect to that, I also do a seminar that's very general, and a lot of them are corporate placements. And one of the context I tried this semester, we'll see how it works with as I get my reviews back. But my last class was about, or second last class was about mindfulness. We actually did like a 10-minute meditation in class about just slowing down and listening to, you know, your reaction, and then also connecting that to previous classes on cultural competence and bias, sexual harassment in the workplace, and saying like, you know, slow yourself down and realize what's going on around you. And when you don't do this, you are frankly perpetuating these systems of, you know, oppression and like realize what's going on, your reaction to that. And I think that's really broadly relevant, not just for the nonprofits and religious people, but really everybody.
And it's really about being an effective lawyer. Because, you know, honestly, when you're not being mindful, you know, you're more prone to making mistakes and you know, I mean, there's all of that too. So I mean, like if you're trying to pitch this to a broad audience, it's really about effective lawyering and competence, not just about like being kind and caring, you know, which I think still is also very important.
I have an example of how this can be very powerful in a systemic way. I'm in Minnesota, and we were the first state among 31 to reject a constitutional amendment banning gay marriage. The strategy that was used in the state was very different from the strategy that was used in the previous states, and it was all about love and eschewed sort of the rights-based discussion, and it really allowed people to build bridges across ideology, because, you know, people could relate to this idea of wanting to be able to, you know, pursue the love relationship in your life, and it wasn't strident, it was very wonderful, and so to me that was a really great example of how you could use this kind of thinking to actually effectuate legal change or fight off offensive legal change in that case.
You know what's really interesting to me about this conversation is also how we translate this in our own world, right, as staff, faculty, administrator, in the area of titles that we do. Because I feel like we can all understandably get very angry, bitter, depressed, again, insert various, frustrated, with sort of our role in the institution. And I do think there can be times when students may feel that, right? And we're human too, right? And I think we need to own that, right? And sort of share some of ourselves to students, not just like a hierarchical education, but, you know, share when we're vulnerable. But I think it's an interesting, like, and I'm reflecting on this knowing that, you know, I am by no means I'm perfect in this and have a lot of room to grow, but, you know, we're promoting our students in terms of like coming with empathy and kindness first. I feel like we have to take that back to our own institutions and how we think about our role and how we fit in, knowing that we are, you know, to some extent marginalized, and it's really interesting to think about marginalization us, where like when clients are really marginalized in an incredibly different way than we are. But I just think I have nothing really to say beyond sort of acknowledging that, right? And I feel like there's oftentimes a theme of this conference, right? Where we are in fact the stepchild, which I do believe we are, right? But like, how do we channel that into something sort of positive and into something that follows this philosophy that I think you guys are putting forth, you know, in our own institutions. And not to say that we're going to be challenged with that, but I don't know, just something processing a little bit.
Can I just, people probably know Ben Jones, everybody knows Ben Jones, he runs for president. But he has this new thing he's doing the last year or so called Love Army. Like, and so his big thing right now is that we really, you know, like, we're not gonna change anything I mean, exactly what Lex was saying, like, we totally, this all has to come from a place of love, and, you know, and he's an interesting guy to be kind of doing that. So I encourage you to like Google it or read about it, and hearing him talk about it is just lovely and wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, for me, a part of it came from sort of seeing this whole thing about resistance and thinking about, can resistance equal love, right? You know, like, can resistance equal kindness? Does it always have to be like this kind of angry, fierce, you know, kind of thing to actually be transformative? And I think, you know, kind of sort of, again, I agree, like there's a lot of challenges to get this, you know, broader, like, philosophy to make a difference in our institutions, but just in ourselves, like how we present ourselves, how we are with our students. You know, I think it opens up something for them. Like of course, it's different with the 1Ls, but it's amazing with the 1Ls, right? Like to have somebody message to them that you matter.
I think they're not used to it. I mean, I have to say, I've been teaching a long time and I still love it. And the reason I love, every semester I say to myself, I'm going to learn something from my students. And I always do, but I mean, I have to get humble. You know, I have to not be a know-it-all. I have to be open to students coming from different places. And I don't love every single one of them equally, but it really does ground me. I mean, this is kind of where I am as a teacher.
I wanted to share one other thing that I didn't, you know, include in the PowerPoint. I found really useful work that other people have done. Gary Friedman, are people familiar with that name? He is a mediator. So this book is sort of, he talks about conflict professionals, and he has this kind of visual called going down the V. And the idea is that we have to sort of start with ourselves, like if we're one side of the V and the client is on the other. It's like we have to start with ourselves, and we have to go deeper and deeper, right? We have to get in touch with our own biases, our own judgments, all of that in order to find the points of connection at the bottom of the V. And so I used that analogy also in working with my 1Ls, and I was like, all right, we're going down the V, right? Like we could start with what you kind of identify as your strengths and values, and then as we go through this course, we're going to go deeper and deeper, and it's going to get more and more uncomfortable. But at the bottom of that V is where the real points of connection are, you know, and I think that, you know, sort of trying to find ways to just like use other tools, visual tools, language, you know, that messages to students that the more they're willing to go on this kind of journey, you know, themselves, the more effective they're going to be as lawyers. And that's sort of where I'm at about it. I just think that the more self-aware we can all be, the more, you know, the more this stuff is gonna go better.
I just want to recommend an oldie but goodie, which is Parker Palmer's The Courage to Teach.
Yes, yeah, I had a Parker Palmer slide.
Okay, well,
I had my Parker Palmer slide.
I used to give that to all the new teachers. I haven't done that in a long
Yep.
time, but if you haven't read it, I mean, he makes that.
Oh, yeah,
which
and
is,
he
you gotta
talks.
bring yourself to teaching if you expect students to bring themselves. It's the same thing, but I do recommend.
Yeah, and Marjorie Turniante, he has this great book called Healing the Heart of Democracy,
Yeah.
which takes it all into kind of this socio-political sphere.
Let your
and-
life speak. I mean, he does all this stuff,
Yeah,
but
that is-
particularly in the context of teaching. And then there is a companion book that's from people who've kind of been through his seminars called Stories from the Courage to Teach, and those are first-person accounts of people and how they brought that into their teaching.
There's also a discussion guide.
Yeah, there is, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, that's more of a resource for all of us, you know.
Right, sorry.
Yeah, a totally great resource.
Well, and some of you mentioned at the very beginning what you wanted to get out of this, well, Susan and I, we first did this at the Southern Clinical Conference, where the theme, what was the theme?
Going back to our roots.
Coming back to our roots, clinical education, coming back to our social justice roots. And Susan contacted me and said, "Do you want to do something?" I said, "Well, I don't even know if I should go now because I don't teach anything social justice anymore." And that's where we started this conversation about, you know, wherever we're teaching, we can plant these seeds or teach the skills that others can build on, or we can build on what others are teaching too, to have that person have that aha moment where, you know, they are transformed or they are more aware. So anyway, so it's funny because I heard that from some of y'all. That's what I heard. Is that I'm no longer doing the public interest thing now, you know. But we can still see ourselves as social justice activists.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. So, thank you so much.
On time and on budget.
So you want us to put these up?
Yeah,
please put them up.
bring them up. Put them over on this side of the board, and then if anyone wants to.
We'll take pictures. I want to take pictures.
Yes, they're trying to get together.